Hello, dear hearts. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Enlightened Lineages talk regarding the origins of our well-known festival called Carnival, which is definitely celebrated in the grandest way in Brazil, in our present-day world, as well as so many other parts on this planet, generally, stretching through the end of January through to the equinox, March equinox. So February, I guess, is in between both those months, and in February, I guess the grandest celebration and declaration of Carnival takes place worldwide. Now, what use is going out into the world blindly celebrating Carnival without knowing where it all began? Especially since it isn't just a party. It isn't just a reason to, embrace oblivion. In fact, it's the contrary of that. It is to embrace awareness and to be very much brought into the secret mysteries and sanctuary of what is Dionysus, Ancient Greek divinity, and also part of the sacred old god pantheon, and has definitely been with us for a very, very long time as an awakened divinity. So for those of you that know Dionysus, I think you can simply just absorb what's being shared, with understanding as well that he goes by many, many names, and that is one of the names, especially in ancient Greece, that was attributed to what we know as the 13th Olympian. In this expression, I want to also extend a deep wish for everybody to be really grateful and satisfied and happy and joyful to find out about the origins of Carnival, because it is a massive marker of transformation, working with the natural cycles. And not only is it a marker, it is also so deeply respected in terms of an ancient enlightened lineages portal of initiation. And because it's a portal of initiation, we're always working with the liminal structure, and therefore we're in the in-between, and there's no coincidence such grand celebrations are happening before the equinox in March and the astrological new year, and this has been so since it all began. So a little bit about Dionysus based on ancient Greek myth and references to Dionysus since over 3,000 years ago. As I was mentioning, he is the patron divinity, the patron deity, awakened deity of the festival, which is Carnival. Carnival did originate in ancient Greece. It has Minoan roots, ancient Greek roots, classical Greece roots, and of course Mycenaean roots. It's definitely enveloped in everything that is ancient Greek, and has until this day also been worshipped everywhere in the country, and in various ways around the same time of year as the general Carnival, which is happening everywhere else. So the thread is still there, it's intact. We continue to celebrate Carnival in the land of its origination. However, the knowledge as to where it all began has definitely transformed over time, evolved over time, and indeed the origination, the concept of it being an enlightened lineages offering to this earth, the initiation and the portal of Carnival has totally been lost over time. So very few are aware of this. Very few are aware that we can step into deep initiation and ritual and transformation if we have the right understanding during such times. So, as I was saying, a bit about Dionysus. First and foremost, being the 13th Olympian, and also being a pre-Olympian divinity that has gone by many, many names, but has always ruled over the ability in this liminal dimension to liberate He's known as the liberator. Now, some of you may be wondering what's the difference between Uranos as the planetary awakener, right, liberator, and this mythical myth of Dionysus, who is known as a liberator. Well, there is a very big difference, because the planetary energy and force is working solely with astrology when we describe what it can do, because Uranos, who is also an ancient Greek divinity, has not been described as an awakener, a liberator. He heralds different symbolism as a divinity, but the planet definitely is taken into this context of being able to awaken. So just wanting to make that clear distinction. Dionysus, though, as a enlightened divinity, as someone in ancient Greek myth who is part of the divinities of ancient Greece, he is attributed to the capacity to liberate, working in the in-between. He has been invoked as someone who can stop us from cyclic chains. And he has, through his mystery schools, cults, and sacred, you could say schools of initiation, he has indeed shown the way into awakening, into freedom, through being a liberator. And Dionysus has always had a liking towards the ecstatic, the wild, the uncontrollable, frenzy, glee, ecstatic splendor through sound, through the power of symphony, music, and celebration. And that's what we probably all know about when we think of Dionysus, because he is also the patron divinity of the vine, of wine. Wine as medicinal, sacred elixir. Wine as something that was created through ritual, not again through blind commercial reasoning. It was created as sacred offering substance. And also the entire enlightened lineage of the vine comes from ancient Greece as well. So the wine that we drink today, its origination, when created correctly, was actually in honor of Dionysus as well, as a ritualistic medicinal substance that was offered to these awakened divinities and consumed at different key times of year, not in excess and not disrespectfully, because it was considered a holy substance, once again, in origination and enlightened lineage that supported the path to getting awakened when created correctly. So Dionysus rules the vine, has ruled the vine, is the patron divinity, awakened divinity of the vine, which is wine, as he is the patron divinity of ecstatic ritual and frenzy, coming out of our inhibitions. How has he done this? How has he been empowered to do this? It has a lot to do with his own life story, which is worth looking at, and all the different stages that he went through. Also not sharing the same mother as many of his siblings. In the ancient Greek myth, he is actually birthed by Semele, beloved Semele, and Theus, Zeus. So, that in itself has a whole other lineage and mystical transformative force in what he is offering. His siblings, the majority were either, birthed by Zeus alone or Zeus in union secretly with different priestesses and representations of the Great Mother, primordial Great Mother Goddess on the physical plane. And of course, Hera, which is also the mother of quite a few of their children in myth. But Dionysus, his lineage is specifically coming from an ancient Greek Semele and Zeus. So that vibration. Now, I feel as though the word twice born, when we're looking at Dionysus and the lore of what he represents, him being a twice born in comparison to his siblings like Athena, the Great Mother Goddess, Athena being thrice born, okay? Twice born has a lot to do with this dualistic reality. He can function in the human plane. He, in fact, is very active in the human plane, and therefore is an excellent, you could say, mediator between the celestial, incredible awakened realities and this earth plane. And Hermes, which we could also say Mercury, has also, been placed in similar, I guess, mythical roles as being, a mediator. However, it's very different to the actual cult of Dionysus, what Dionysus was and is all about. Once again, ruling ecstatic dimensions, ritual substances, celebration, but also the raw truth that comes from confronting certain states of being that are linked to oblivion, but in teaching that it is through the awareness of that oblivion, through the awareness of what is binding the actual seeker, in the process of understanding what binds. In that process, you will understand the freeing capacity. So, just to put it simply, we are all very much interested in pleasure and ecstasy and satisfying circumstances and celebration and feasts. We all love parties, and that's a great thing. And in an ultimate sense, celebration is always going to be the result. Getting completely liberated is something to celebrate. It is an incredibly fascinating dimension of ecstasy itself. However, in the plane we're in, like the Dionysian twice born reality, in a dualistic state, it's always going to come with the ups and the downs. So going beyond that dualism, as the Dionysian law teaches, and all of his secret, incredible mystery schools, very much emphasize on going completely into, first and foremost, what it is, this oblivion, through confrontation, through awareness. And it's a fascinating study and research on one hand, but also when we think about the authentic experience of all those who followed him and his schools in the ancient times, and the result of those incredible beings that were able to follow through and awaken fully through the teachings of what he gave and what he left behind as someone who was very much among the people, not just a divinity. And, it's something that we could, in fact, just get goosebumps, contemplating on, because until this day, the world still respects these key festivals. And even though the origins have been forgotten, we can just relink the origins to our current situation, and through that we are going to have a direct ability to make the most out of what the Dionysus' ancient and sincere way for us all is all about. So yes, a bit more about him. I feel many of you know him as well as, I guess, being quite interested in communication with the human plane, even the possession of beings. People have traced back in history that the interaction with Dionysus as a divinity was very much about oracular work, similar to what certain oracles would do. They would transmit the teachings, the messages, the prophecies of divine intervention, and Dionysus was one who would be very interested in intervening in those openings when mediums were there, able to then express certain truths. However, he comes with a lot of secrecy. He's just as mysterious as the priests and priestesses of antiquity. And that is something that is rightfully so, because you cannot just give the sacredness of what he's capable of offering to humanity without a sincere yearning for it, and also the capacity to endure it, because his journey and what he has offered others to follow in terms of the path that he leaves behind is very out of this world. You would not be able to rationalize it as something in the hands of one's control. It's really about a really authentic devotion. And when you let something like that lead you, your main goal would be awakening. And of course, knowing the truth. That's what awakening is. And through knowing it, you can awaken everybody, right? And his role is this ability to end the wheel, the circle, the returning, being in the chains, right? So he's the liberator. That's what he's known as being. This will get to everything about Carnival, but I have to express all this the way I'm doing it so you can receive it and understand the value of enlightened lineages wherever they've been on this earth. And in my case, because of my maternal lineage and being so graciously given so much linked to the ancient Greek Enlightened Lineages throughout my whole life, I'm very much involved in all of this. So I do feel qualified in sharing this because it's part of me. It's what I've learned, what my elders have passed on to me. And I'm so grateful to have it, to share it in the most raw and true way, not, lost in translation, so to speak. So, calling in, bringing in Dionysus, basically him being known as the liberator, okay? Him being known with all the mysterious mystery rites, him being known as someone who can break the chains of sorrow, break the chains of restraint, and release us from entrapment, okay? Again, through a confrontational awareness that is taught through these different states of celebration and, monitored entrancement and devotional bliss and ecstasy, basically. When you're really devoted to an enlightened divinity, devoted in a way that you're asking for the truth, you want to benefit all this universe, you want to be liberated, you get instantly connected to the possibility of then furthering that and eventually finding what it is for you. For most people, it ends up becoming someone who's an awakened teacher or a guide or whatever's needed to get you forward, whatever needs to manifest to get you forward. But invoking that, wanting that to happen in the truest way, that's the start. So if we think about Dionysus as being, someone who can loosen sorrow, who can, again, being the ruler of the vine, which is the holy wine, which what that had done in antiquity is medicinally bring a lot of developed states of consciousness. It wasn't toxic, it was organic, there was no chemical involvement. It was something that was made again through ritual, prayer, invocation. So much respect. We're talking about the grapevine. And when you would consume it, you're communing with Dionysus. So basically he would be there with you in that. Just like in other cultures in the world, there are different divinities that rule certain plants and certain sacred herbs. And there's rituals around that. I can't really discuss them because I'm not authorized to, because I don't have that knowledge. But I can give you an example because I've heard about this through friends. If you think about Panchamama, for example, and people that are exposed to that reality of a healing passage, that's some form of a divinity, that is linked to a certain baby of Gaia, which is a plant medicine, right? That is offering a certain kind of journey and result. So that's a comparative example for you. Dionysus is linked to the wine, the vine, the original vine, the first ever vineyard in this whole universe, which I've been to many times, is in Greece, So imagine the most ancient vineyard ever to be found, where you're cultivating grapes and making holy wine, is in Greece. The enlightened lineages of the vine, of wine, of this sacred substance is something you drink, comes from, in origin, ancient Greece, and was all about Dionysus. Now you drink that and you would be him, you would become him, you would embody what is that authentic ecstasy, a glimpse into, nothing to do with dualism, a glimpse into a freeing state. Even if temporary, you would have some, experience of a bliss in your body, and that medicinal process will erupt so many other results, So it was ceremonial, and it was communion with divinity through that. But the secrecy and the mystery school around the whole entire process, that cannot be revealed or taught the way I'm talking to you now. However, just giving you a flavor is very important, because this will make you understand what I'm about to express when we talk about Carnival. So again, key takeaway number 1, the common aim here is wanting to get enlightened, wanting to trust and devote oneself into what is divinity within and throughout. See, Dionysus didn't separate Dionysus with you. You could be Dionysus. You could become that in terms of your experience. You could embody that. Become that means merge with that through the communion with the sacred vine that was made in a very, very ritualistic, authentic, enlightened way, right? So that is over 4,000 years ago, the first ever to be seen on this earth historically. Cultivation of the vine in terms of vineyards and historical ruins that prove that. And there's just so much more to say, but that's another subject. The enlightened lineages of wine is another subject linked to Dionysus, okay? But we're going to Carnival because Carnival involves also consuming wine. It has been part of the ancient rule of actually, preparing for Carnival and the feasting, the drinking and the costumes, the masks, the music, the fire, the feasting, all of that, the eating carne, meat, right? So-called meat in inverted brackets, and I'll explain why a bit further on into what I'm saying. But it was all part of this preparatory, massive eruption of, a freeing experience. And it was preparatory because, the year goes through its phases. And if you know the astrological understanding of the phases of the seasons in natural order, you're automatically going to be able to work with divine timing to best serve this takeaway, this key takeaway. Point number 1, again, is getting enlightened, wanting to get fully realized for the benefit of all beings, for the benefit of all the universe. So, ancient Homeric writings also have definitely proven the value of Dionysus. And, he would have many sacred feminine divinities surrounding him in frenzy, dancing, singing, swirling, many sacred feminine divinities in a pure way. When I say pure, I'm talking about, in a world beyond what we understand right now. It's an expression of the sacredness, the mystical sacredness of the energies of the feminine, the infinite moods of the feminine, and the play between the feminine and the masculine energy. And he would have all these sacred feminine representations and incredible ladies of frenzy, in ecstatic dance and in really incredible awakened enchantment surrounding him almost all the time. So in representation is what I'm talking about, especially when there was an option and a reason to worship and to venerate him at different stages throughout the seasons and the natural world. So there was a lot of singing, there was a lot of music, a lot of dancing, and again, communion with this awakened divinity, this incredible enlightened presence. So just to give you a bit of a side note, how we can look at the current theme, which is Carnival. It's linked to the Catholic and the Orthodox Easter, right? And that's no coincidence also, because Carnival is a Latin word. It is about meat. It's very much about meat. And I guess, if we look at the current Greek holidays, we have Tsiknobemti, which is Smoky Thursday, which is about having a huge consumption of meat before you actually prepare for Lent, because we're going towards the Easter, right? And there's all this fasting that takes place. But in the pre-Christian timeline, at the exact same time of year, there was all this arising and awakening in many ways of everything that is Dionysus, because of Carnival. And it was linked to also many other of the awakened divinities of ancient Greece. It's not him alone, because don't forget, Persephone was slowly preparing to return to her mother also, Demeter. So she's also in a liminal context of awakened divinities. Dionysus was there in the in-between, serving the human plane of existence through festivities that would do so much to, again, bring this capacity of bliss within the body, this true communion, having divine happen to the human experience, not creating a distinction as a separate entity, but becoming one with such awakened frequency and presence, even if it was experiential and then it would pass, just like when you drink, you reach a certain state, then eventually it dissolves, it passes. Imagine in the ancient times, you're not just drinking because of the taste, because of how it makes you feel. You actually become one with something very pure and authentic, awakened. That is of the best, ways to relate to substance such as wine. But that can't be found, almost impossible to find that today, unless it's made in a certain way and the certain ritual is conducted and prayer ceremony, and it's basically in accordance with true lineage. And I'm sure it's happening in some ways, because there are various enlightened lineages. There's not just one, right? There are various, but like I said, it has to be an authentic lineage. If it's an authentic lineage, then there's ways to do this with certain substances. But if we're looking at Dionysus and his relationship to the vine, that way is, almost impossible to see it again, because who even creates a drink of wine like that? who worships their ambelia, which means, their vineyards, the way that the ancients did? It was all so organic. That's the starting point. Anyway, I won't sidetrack too much there. So we continue, because there really is so much to share about this, and I know it's going to make you very, very excited. I say this because, we all love Carnival, right? Personally, I haven't experienced Carnival in Brazil, but I know so many friends that have, and I have a few friends that go there religiously every year because they really value the celebration, right? Personally, I've experienced Carnival in Greece. I've experienced it. It's been around me in Portugal. It's been around me in Spain. It's been around me also in Australia, in a different way, not exactly the same way. I've also experienced it in India. Strangely, this Carnival, the concept of dressing up, the concept of costume, don't think it's just in one place. It's literally in so many parts of this earth, and it's very, very sacred. So I guess we're going to get right into it. The ritual elements that have inspired the Noscene, anything to do with Noscene festivals. So, if you think of Dionysus and all his festivities, his feasting, his ecstatic music, all the masks, the costumes, the seasonal rites, he has been inspired in his other names, which are linked to the old gods, that are over 38. That's 3,800 years old. Technically, that's over 3,000 years old if we want to trace it back to his actual name as Dionysus. But that's close to 4,000 years of just a legitimate historical link to the influence and the inspiration of everything that his festivals are all about. So I feel even if, you know, we approach all of this in our day-to-day life right now as a commercial experience, we need to be excited that we're no longer having to go about it in that way. We can start to apply the healing more, I guess, sincere healing. The better way to put it is authentic passage into these energetic timelines. And even if everyone around you is going about Carnival in a more, in a way that's linked to oblivion, that really doesn't link it up to this origination that I'm discussing right now, the fact that you're going to know that it's an enlightened lineage, that an enlightened being, a realized being that cared about humanity, created this to help us get through, the in-between, to cut the chains of what is cyclic. That's going to bring us more enthusiasm to wear our costumes and offer it up to the enlightened beings, to offer it up to these awakened divinities such as Dionysus and whatever retinues have supported this sacred passage. So, okay. I was mentioning Christians and the Christian calendar and then Christian understanding. But basically, during the time of Carnival, for example, in Greece, currently, we do Lent. And prior to that, around 11 or 12 days before Lent, there is this feast of eating a lot of meat. Now, this isn't just something new that's been put into the mix. It's because the feasting on meat and drinking, this sacred substance, the wine, back in those days, in the ancient times, was actually a ritualistic, sacred, again, passage into understanding about where we are and the symbolism of these two very much dualistic states of what meat is all about, which is flesh and bone, and then the substance, the liquid form of that. It's ecstatic when you think about it in terms of the pleasures the ancient world would have in consumption of all of these very, satisfying substances. But they weren't doing it for the pleasure. Actually, it was something to confront the human world. And, flesh and bone is what we are. It's that limited function. We're in a temporary form. And somehow understanding that was part of why there was this consumption of meat. But I feel as though, if we think about the emphasis on that in the Christian timeline, that would become more prominent, because when we look at the historical, world of the ancient ones, when we go to Carnival, it was very much more about, confronting reality through that ecstatic state and the reversal of social order, right? So somehow doing things publicly, breaking anything that was constraining and rigid, wearing costumes, getting out of your, everyday attire and becoming something else in offering, right? Through mockery, through satire, through temporary and social looseness, through also the roasting specifically, or burning of meat and consuming it, which again had a lot to do with flesh and bone and making a joke of the human condition, the human existence, making the self, the I, what we consider as that more of a loose, free, kind of like not so heavy place where it's not something that is grandiose, but in fact, more temporary, right? Understanding that the self and the I has a temporary function. Dionysus really pointed this out and what he was doing with these very, very, very powerful celebrations, through costume wearing, through consumption, again, of sacred substance, and also through again, the roasting and the frying and the, all of what they were doing with the meat in those days also was, again, expressing some form of a temporary truth that, the flesh and bone, it's what we are. But what are we beyond that? The human condition. What are we beyond that? And it's interesting because even though there is sometimes quite a controversy when we think of Dionysus, because most people, they get really curious. They wonder if it has anything to do with, I guess, the exact opposite and contrary of awakened divinities, enlightened divinities. And some would attribute that whole world to a more demonic, let's say, or diabolical reality, right? But it's not the case, because if the aim of such an awakened divinity such as Dionysus was to cut the chains that bind, to free us out of the circle, to get us out of the chains, to be that liberator, then you can see the intention. And obviously the practices at the surface level that I'm discussing them, right, were very evidently proving that getting fully awakened was the main aim, and loosening the self up, dissolving it, not letting it be such a heavy baggage, getting us into a more understanding, a greater understanding, arriving us to an understanding, a greater understanding about the cyclical also side of reality too. And this then also confirms that anything linked to Dionysus definitely declares that the ancient Greeks and their mystery schools did believe in reincarnation. They did believe in there something being a cyclical dimension, where it's not one life. And that is a beautiful thing, because, since Dionysus is so ancient, his mystery schools are so ancient, then this play between East and West is doing something wonderful. And that is showing us that the West also had reincarnation, long ago. This is over 3,000 years ago in terms of a belief. So we are really happy to declare that, because the schools of Dionysus are proof, they're evidence that the ancient Greek Enlightened Lineages had reincarnation. We believed in reincarnation. Okay, so moving on. So Carnival, a festival that had so many role reversals, okay? Villages and people of certain, locations throughout the globe, they would be masqueraded in incredible costumes and do so many parades and, do these preparatory, incredible declarations of divine expression through, again, coming out of their normal version of the I. And it was all in honor of Dionysus, right? So you see that still happening until today. Later, when Christianity came in, it basically became Carnival, and it was reinterpreted. Basically anything to do with Dionysian energy became Carnival. And what is Carnival? We say Apokrios in Greek, in terms of the festival that's taking place mostly in February. So it's important to know that there's, I guess, a need, whatever came after that timeline of these awakened divinities, there was a need to maintain the ancient truth, but somehow camouflage it into the newfound religions. So it's not that they got entirely lost, it's just the evolution didn't have the same names, nor have the complete and total understanding. I mean, look, when we go to church, for example, we also are consuming wine as a holy substance, right? We're also having something that's in some form of a representation of the flesh of Christ himself. Now, if you look at that in ancient, rituals linked to Dionysus, that meat was there too. Again, consuming something that's been transformed, flesh and bone transformed into a divine substance with the wine through certain ritual, and so much else. Again, playing with the temporary state, which is the human condition, and teaching humans about this higher need, the greater state, which is a communion with divinity. So the church did in many ways continue that on through the teachings of Jesus Christ. But as you can see, it's not as elaborate, right? However, they have been put into the continuation of Christianity and Catholicism. And I guess in many other belief systems on a worldwide level, you can see the continuation of a lot of what I'm telling you now. But it's so important that we understand the origins of these starting points, which again is very much the ancient Greek Enlightened Lineages. So, yeah, I guess the costumes of Carnival are also offering, again, the identity play, the various facades. And it's a freeing thing being something else or someone else as an offering. It's a freeing thing, invoking something else, where you no longer have to be so fixated on a self as it is, but instead, be able to play. And that's why the mockery emphasis there is, linked to this Dionysus and what he had taught when we're doing sacred rites and passage and initiation through what is Carnival, playing with reality through that, through the costume offering, also the music, the song, the dance, being something else, preparing as something else. If you imagine theatre, another territory, which is Dionysus, he rules theatre, right? It's an entire enlightened lineage, theatre. But again, that's a subject for another day. But the origin of that is also, and has been, an offering always to the awakened divinities. Theatre was an offering to the gods. To the gods in ancient Greek does not mean gods the way we understand it in English. It's about an awakened force, a divine presence, an awakened, fully awakened divine presence that was witnessing that. So theatre was also an offering. So Carnival embodies almost all of the sacred enlightened lineages that are linked to Dionysus, and puts them all into one. You have the theatrics, the costume, you have the wine, and you also have all of these secret dimensions of ritual substance and feast, and you have the presentation of it all through dance, song, celebration, and a lot of movement and fire. So I guess the feasting has been a very important factor when you get together with others, when you're worshipping divinity. You want to celebrate, you want to feast, and you're doing it to connect with a greater state of being and in trust of something greater than the self, because ultimately you want to be divinely, I guess, consumed by the truth, by the truth in terms of a force. In Greek we say pneuma, which is a holy force, divine force, and we want to be enveloped by that. You understand? So being totally brought into our most authentic and sincere presence has a lot to do with just how much divinity are we wanting to commune with and awaken within us, right? And find that freedom within us, which is all about the eventual complete dissolving of the self, of the ego identity of the I. And the reason should always be really wanting to be of benefit. I mean, I agree with that. I agree that that is the main reason. The ancient Greeks, because they were entering a state, those who are on the path to awakening through these different mystery schools, because they were entering a state of, beyond dualism, just to put it quite frankly, I couldn't be able to even discuss with you right now any opinions or expressions on what that actually is or meant. But it was a very meritorious time because it wasn't about the intellect, it was experiential. And Dionysus was and has been known to be so exceptionally kind to the human realm because he would always intervene and be caring to support the human realm in that awakening. Okay, so I did write, I guess very much so, when I shared all this, that I wanted to, I guess, point out how this will be of benefit to you. Okay, let's start there. And how this will be of benefit to you that's listening this, right? And also the support that you can actually offer others when you're embracing the original, I guess, pathway of what going towards Carnival is and why it's so valuable. But understanding the depths of why and how to best work with Carnival as a support to the path of genuine awakening. Okay, so I think I want to finalize this talk by answering all of that. But I'm doing this openly. I'm putting this on YouTube publicly. It's not a private mystery school that I offer. And I'm doing it that way because, I'm just giving you, I guess, a foundational understanding. It's important that we connect with the foundational understanding. And also, just through knowing this, you can have the right intention. You can be more interested in what's most important, right? And celebrate that and have a meaningful experience when approaching things like Carnival. Because Carnival, okay, if we look at Brazilian Carnival, the most important carnival and most popular carnival in the whole planet Earth, and has been for a very long time, was brought to Brazil by the Portuguese. What the Portuguese did, we all know, was disgusting, was horrible, the whole conquest that took place there. But they brought the Carnival there, okay? And then it was, of course, culturally infused with everything else that was happening in Brazil at the time. So it has its own flavor and version of Carnival. That's why it's exquisite, because there's so much indigenous also influence and various cultures and customs all involved in, I guess, the template, which is Carnival. So what is that Carnival template that Portugal brought to Brazil? It came from the Romans. Where did the Romans and even the Celtic peoples get it from? Okay, from the ancient Greeks. Do you understand? So that comes from the origination of Dionysus and the pre-Hellenistic and classical names of those enlightened beings, the Olympians and whatever else. Pre would have had other names, original names linked to Mycenaean times, Minoan times, and again, pre-Hellenistic, pre-classical Greece times, which was all linked to ancient Greece anyway. So all of that is so powerful because Dionysus was there functioning, offering that to everybody, and then it evolved and eventually even arrived to what we know as modern-day Brazil, and it's gone everywhere, almost everywhere on this earth. But the Carnival of Brazil, now you know how it became what it is, but where it actually came from. So the Portuguese, as I said, got it from the Romans and some of the Celtic peoples, but mostly from the Romans, which they all got it from the ancient Greeks. And in origin, Dionysus as an awakened divinity, wanting us to commune with divinity through these festive, very celebrated reasons to do so, that prove to us the flickering flame, which is one life, but also the value of that flame, because it's burning, it's beautiful, you can see it, it's illuminating, but it's not forever. So how are we going to make that blaze? How are we going to make that shine so brightly? It's simple, by being that flame. Being that flame implies that, you're not at all concerned about anything other than brightly being. And brightly being means being awakened, illuminated. Dionysus, he offered that to the people. He showed the way. He's not the only one that did in ancient Greece. And that's what I cherish about the enlightened lineages of this entire earth. When we can understand that many have been enlightened, many have offered us enlightened lineages, many have provided means for people to get enlightened, we should feel comforted by that, because the paths are infinite, and therefore we can definitely trust that if we really, really want to get enlightened and reconnect with such incredible possibilities, we will actually find the keys. If it's authentic, our craving, if it's authentic, our yearning, right? Personally, if I could transport people back to those days, I would. If I could open the door to a realm that offered an authentic Dionysian experience, I would, because the purity in that expression in those days, you cannot find that today. We are in a very degenerate time. However, you can find that purity in people's hearts. So the people on this planet Earth that still have that lineage, that still have that purity in their heart, I can assure you they will appear. Because all of the origination, awakened lineages, they cannot be put out. They're designed that way. They're designed to always return, because that's the aim. Until infinite realms are emptied, until everybody is free of their suffering. That's what Dionysus wanted, everybody to be free of their suffering. When that happens, not in a way that is involved in this dualistic reality where we're happy and we're sad and we're good and we're bad, in a way that we go beyond all of that dualism, when we actually are fully realized. When that takes place, imagine it's the completion, and that is the best thing that can happen. So, because there is that wish to benefit all beings when that takes place, that means that cyclic existence, when it happens, has ceased, and that's what Dionysus actually wants. When we look at his ancient prayers, when we look at everything that is linked to him in terms of invocation prayer, not everything is available to find. I'm sorry about that. A lot of it is secret, but I'll give you a little takeaway. One of the most beautiful ones that I've ever come across talks about how he liberates you from cyclic existence. And actually it also emphasizes who supports him to do that. And he has incredible helpers. Enlightened beings are never alone. And the beauty of this all is you are offered the opportunity to merge with divinity. So Carnival, let's be so happy, let's rejoice that it's the Carnival time. And we are right now learning that the origin of Carnival is an enlightened lineage, Dionysus. He is the patron divinity of Carnival. He wants us to wake up. He wants us to get free. He wants us to become free through the power of bliss, through the power of sincere, ecstatic experience that is honorific to wanting to commune with divine. Okay? Not through addiction, not through oblivion, not through intoxication, through wanting to commune with divine. So what costume are you going to wear to celebrate Dionysus, to aspire that everyone can reach that state beyond good and bad, beyond duality, beyond the twice born? Dionysus had to be twice born for us. He had to come twice for us. Do you understand? So he can relate to our dualistic level. So in order to go beyond, in order to be free of cyclic existence, what costume are you going to wear to celebrate Carnival? What's your offering going to be? That's the beauty of it. Every year we would always create a new mask, create a new costume, and celebrate the play. Anything is allowed to be put forth as an offering. Whatever costume you want to wear. Right? And then the really sacred, most beautiful, most sincere part of all of this, and I have literally been speaking here for almost an hour nonstop. I do want to have my teas. I think it's cold now on the table, but I'm also entranced to sharing this with you because I know it's going to help immensely, and I am grateful that I have been nudged by the in-between to just give it all forth, because it's my duty, it's my lineage, So I have to perform, and I'm doing it finally, and I'm very happy I can. So, yes. What are you going to wear? We asked, right? The question already. And how to best work with this? Through that intention. Wanting to commune with divinity. Wanting to commune with awakened beings. Wanting to get awakened for the benefit of all beings. So what costume will you wear? And to make this a genuine support to the path of awakening is to understand its origin. It's to understand the reason why it came to be, why Carnival is happening, and where that leads, you know. So as a passage for an initiate, it's a celebration of communing with divinity. Get your friends together, have a house party, wear costumes, light a fire, sing together, you know, dance together, right? Have some feast and do it in honor of awakened beings and retinues and the capacity to get liberated for the benefit of all beings. Think of Dionysus, you know, think of him because he deserves it. I think he has been really patient with humanity as a force. And as I said, he goes by many, many names. But just as his wine is loved and venerated until right now, and everybody needs it, almost everybody wants it, it's in so many people's lives. Those of you that don't drink, it doesn't matter. Think of it like this. Just having any grape drink, so like a sugarless grape juice, that's also communing with Dionysus. It's got nothing to do with alcohol specifically. It doesn't even need to have alcohol in it, quite frankly. So, the grape itself, the vine, eating grapes as an honorific thing to do in this very celebrated time. Many have asked me, what are you going to wear this year? I'm going to be wearing a costume of someone who's in the military. It's a holy war right now, so I'm going to have to wear my best military costume and be very enthusiastic to make everybody want to remember the best part of the human condition and propel us sort of really enthusiastically have fun with it too, and also be really cool about the fact that, you know, this reality is temporary, so we have to value it, not take it for granted, but be so happy that we even have come to terms with, understood that there is something beyond, that we can commune with divinity. It's worth celebrating, isn't it? So I'm going to be dressed as what I said. And if you can hear so much music, it's because where I am right now, Carnival is happening. But it's happening all month pretty much, different pockets of celebration. So that I can't switch off. But even hearing that proves that we're in, you know, that Dionysian spirit. So I wish you all an incredible return to the origination, to awakened and enlightened lineages. And whatever awakened and enlightened lineages that you're linked to, remember, there's no better or worse. It's important to just always pray and seek out for the most authentic connection so that you can definitely accomplish the real true freedom. So there's no deception. So you can obtain the best knowledge, you know. I'll leave you with something really special to contemplate on, because I've already said so much and I feel it's going to be so much fun for everybody already getting all this knowledge. But, you know, when I think of, Orpheus, and what he had to do for true love, it's so touching because he was quite... he was quite heartbroken, right, when he lost Eurydice, and that, when we look at Dionysus and how he, I guess, was part of that story versus Apollo and a few of the other awakened divinities, you can understand that the realm that these awakened divinities function from are not at all in this mindset that we've been conditioned in, which is coming from self and an I that is limited to, again, dualism. When they support Orpheus. They're trying to bring him to, I guess, the greater state of being, that is his capacity. But what I love about the story is that he was just incapable of letting go of the love of his life. He wanted true life, and he wanted true life, yes, definitely. But he also wanted true love, right? So he wanted them both, true love, true life. He wanted the true love in life, therefore being a true life. He wanted to be, I guess, in many ways defying, going against anything that is cyclic, through maintaining being who he was, his identity, which is complicated. So, for example, he's Orpheus. I'll try and explain it to you. He lost the love of his life, so he wanted to go to the underworld and fetch her back, resurrect her. You see? So that stamina, that stubbornness of wanting her back, I wholeheartedly understand and value that beauty. And everything that he was, he himself has people prostrating to him, because he also became a completely awakened entity in the ancient Greek world. And he has written and composed some of the best songs and hymns and poems that are inexpressibly clear, that have got nothing to do with the intellect. And translations have destroyed so much of the essence of the actual original meaning. But once again, back to the point of the story, people would say, Dionysus, why did you punish him? Why did you let all of your retinues interfere with him and his mourning process, But the argument is, he wasn't actually doing that. He was just trying to lighten him up and take him out of the seriousness of what is, the identity, the I, the self. Meanwhile, it didn't really work, because he was stubborn. He wanted his true love back. And it's beautiful what he did to get her, try to get her back. It's beautiful what he went through to get her back, basically. And I won't say more, but anyone who's after anything true, whether it be true love, you have to understand what that means first before you agree that you actually really do want true love. But yes, whether it be true love, whether it be a true life, whether it be both, if it's true what you're after, true means complete, authentic, awakened. That's what true means here. Then you will have the support of the awakened ones. That I can assure you. So I wish you all an incredible carnival time. I wish you all an awakened carnival time, and a beautiful entry into understanding the ancient worth of what is Dionysus, and a whole new outlook on wine, grapes, a whole new outlook on theatre, a whole new outlook on Carnival, which basically are all enlightened lineages that have supported infinite beings get fully realized. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much. May all be auspicious. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.